Hi, everyone. This is the 50 States Highpointing podcast and YouTube channel. What started off as a project for a communications class has turned into something that I actually love doing. I have the privilege of providing the platform for people to talk about the extraordinary things they do in the outdoors. Highpointing is the challenge of reaching the highest elevation in each of the 50 states. Highpointers don't get paid for their hobby, no one is sponsored by an outdoor company, and people fit this challenge into their everyday lives that also include careers and family. I found through these interviews that people who attempt this challenge are incredible and genuinely enjoy talking about their experiences. If you consider yourself a Highpointer and you want to share your story on this podcast or interview, please send me an email at 50stateshighpointingpodcast@gmail.com. It has been a pleasure speaking with every Highpointer. I hope you enjoy. So the Highpointer that we're speaking with today is Debrah from Texas. Debrah, welcome.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Good to have you. So can you tell our listeners where you're from and just give a little bit about your background?
So I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I am a Navy veteran, and I only recently got into highpointing within the last couple of years, and I just recently took our first highpointing trip last summer, and I say we because it's me and my two teenage boys and our beagle Bailey, and we recently added a new addition to our family. We have a 7-month-old basset hound, so she'll be highpointing with us from this point forward, and yeah, that's about it.
Oh, that's fun. That's so cool that you can bring your family with you, and especially when your family includes some adventure dogs. So what led you to the outdoors? Were you always a hiker, climber, or did highpointing pull you to the outdoors?
No, I was already an outdoor person.
Yeah.
I was the little kid that would run around in the woods with my cousins and make soups out of the creeks and trees and stir it with sticks like we were making a witch's brew. And, we had different animals when I was growing up, so I spent a lot of time outside. I've always been somebody who is constantly riding a bike, always had a bike since I was very little. Me and my kids, we ride mountain bikes now. We love going to different trails and finding, special and unique waterfalls and just different things to, see the sights.
What's your favorite destination in Texas for outdoor adventure?
So I haven't been there yet, but I have a bunch of locations pinned on my Google Maps to go to, and they're all in the Central Texas area between San Antonio and Austin. There's so many caves and waterfalls and blue holes and swimming holes and, and then of course there's the rivers to go tubing down, which I've done a lot of, but there's a whole bunch of places to be explored that are really beautiful that I want to go check out.
That's so cool. That's awesome. So what do you do in the Navy?
So I was an aviation machinist mate, but I was never attached to an aviation squadron. So I was with cargo, and I learned how to operate cranes with cargo. And then I deployed to Afghanistan with the Seabees, and I was basically an equipment operator. And I did a lot of driving of dump trucks, hauling dirt around in the desert.
And you need that. Well, thank you for your service. Do you feel like your military background helps you when you're out hiking or climbing, whether it be the physical aspect or the mental endurance that it requires?
I think the mental and the physical of not finishing until the job is done, not throwing in the towel, not quitting, even if you're mentally tired, even if you're physically tired, because both of those can, convince you to quit. And I think from the military, we don't quit until the job is done. And it doesn't matter, what's going on around you or inside of you, you have to get the job done. And I think I impress that upon my boys, too, because sometimes they're tired and they want to quit. And I'm definitely a pusher. Don't stop till the job is done. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Because when you reach the top of a mountain, of course, you're halfway.
You're only halfway.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, they're lucky to have you. What a cool family adventure. So what led you to high pointing specifically? Now we know you grew up in the outdoors, but what made you think I'm going to reach the highest point in each state with my sons? And walk us through the itineraries that you've planned. They sound really cool.
Okay, so this is a whole story, and I love this story. So in June of 2021, a friend of mine had a job up in Nevada, and he invited me to come up there to visit him. And so when we got there, it was in Reno, Nevada. And I realized when I got there, I was like, oh, Reno, this is next to Lake Tahoe. Let's go to Lake Tahoe. And so we did. We drove up the mountain. And if you don't know, like Lake Tahoe is a lake in the top of the mountains. So we drive up the mountain to get to Lake Tahoe, and it's stunning. Have you ever been to Lake Tahoe?
No?
Oh my God. Okay, you have to go. And anybody that's listening to this, you have to go. So it's stunning. It's one of those places that like you see pictures or videos or anything and you're like, oh wow, it's amazing. And then like, you go there and it just falls flat. And that's not what Lake Tahoe is. Like, it is exactly what it looks like in the pictures. It's stunning and awe-inspiring and moving. And like, I just wanted to move there instantly. So on the way up the mountain to the lake, I saw a sign for a trailhead to go to Mount Rose. And I was like, I want to go on this trail. So later in the week, I rented a car and I drove up the mountain and went to the trailhead, and I summited Mount Rose. And it's 5 miles to the top of the summit and then 5 miles back down. And it kicked my butt. I will not even pretend like it didn't. I got my rear end handed to me that day. But that was the first time I'd ever climbed a mountain. And that was it. I was sold. I was like, I want to climb all the mountains. And so a couple months after I got home, I looked up online. I was like, I want to know, like, where does this mountain stand in relation to other mountains in the United States? And like, was it even a big one? Did I accomplish something here? And I looked it up, and it was the third tallest mountain in the Tahoe Rim Range, which is all the mountains that go around Lake Tahoe. And so researching on that mountain is how I stumbled on the high pointing stuff. And I came across this list of every state's high point. So I just kept reading. And I realized that it was a thing that people do this, and there was a whole community, and there was a newsletter, and there was a club, and there was a Facebook group. And I was like, oh, well, like, this is amazing. And so, I kind of felt like there was a trail already blazed before me, but I still wanted to walk the trail myself. And my kids love traveling and getting outdoors. So I was like, come on, you're going with me. And they love it too. They love it. I asked them after our first 5 high points if they wanted to continue doing it with me, and do they want to do all 48 or all 50. And so far they're both on board. And so we'll see. And then as far as the itineraries go, so back in the summer of 21, when I was just learning about high pointing, then I started making plans to really do it. And that's when I sat down and I was like, okay, where are the nearest high points? What can I drive to? What can I get to without like flying? And, cost, how can I minimize my cost? Are there high points that I can knock out a bunch all at once? I saw all the clusters and stuff like that. Yeah. And then I just really started putting pen to paper, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this like a week at a time. And I started planning out routes from basically where I live in Texas. Like, okay, I can do this little circle and this circle, and before I actually have to start flying anywhere. And then the next summer, which was last summer of 2022, that's when we actually like put rubber to road and we went out and we started high pointing.
So how old are your sons?
They are 15 and 16.
Okay. And it's cool that you gave them a choice. You said, this is high pointing. We've done 5. Are you sure you're in? They don't have to commit completely to 50 just yet, but it's really cool that you gave them that choice and they are on board.
Yeah. I'm super excited that they're on board. Yeah.
You put that very well when you said that the trail was blazed before you and you're walking along in it, because so many of us are. So do you plan to summit all 50 high points?
It's hard to say that right now because I don't want to get ahead of myself. Because there's, Mount Denali that's a serious expedition. And, Yeah, I'm from Dallas, Texas. We don't have mountains around here, so I don't have any experience in climbing mountains. Like my preparation for Denali will just be doing the other 49. But
Hmm.
I definitely can say 100% for sure we'll definitely do all 48. And then if Denali happens, it happens. If not, at least I did the lower 48.
Yeah, that's perfect. Which high points have you done so far with your family?
So we did Louisiana, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Arkansas.
And what was your favorite and what was their favorite?
So I think we all three had the same favorite, and
Hmm.
it was a close tie. But I think Arkansas came out just above Alabama, definitely,
Okay.
and it was definitely because there's a few viewpoints on the way up the mountain to the high point. The high point, Arkansas, there's no viewpoint; it's just trees.
Really?
But up the mountain, there's a couple of vista points, and they are just they're perfect. They're amazing. They're wonderful. And the skies were clear, so you could just see forever and ever. And it was, we all, we all enjoyed the moments that we took to look out the side of the mountain and the pictures we took. And I think Arkansas kind of won just a little bit more that day.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. You're making really great memories with your family. They'll never forget those moments. Can you tell everyone more about the trip to the high point in Arkansas? What area of the state was it in? And can you describe that a little more?
Okay. So to get to Arkansas on our trip, we came from Memphis, Tennessee. And originally, I wanted to stay a night in Little Rock. No, not Little Rock, Hot Springs. And
Hmm.
the boys, this was towards the end of our trip, and the boys were just ready to go home. So we skipped out on Hot Springs and we went ahead and went directly to the High Point. And the High Point is a couple hours north of Hot Springs. And
Okay.
it's a winding highway through a national forest. It's a very winding road for miles and miles and miles. You're just going through forest and mountains and eventually you get to the road that takes you to the top of the mountain for Arkansas, which is the trail is called Signal Hill, but the mountain is called Mount Magazine, and it's actually a
Right.
state park where the high point is. And then you follow the road up to the top, and then there's a little trail, and I think the trail's only like maybe 2 miles, but it's a little bit of an incline. And my youngest son, we all have our things. So I have a little like a little Bucky beaver. If you're from Texas and you know what Bucky's is, it's a little beaver. And I have this little beaver, and like I take Bucky with me, and I take pictures of Bucky on the high points. My other son likes to like carve his name somewhere, and then the youngest one, he likes to do the boulder thing. If you've seen like little boulder piles on the tops of the at the high points,
Okay.
and that's
Hmm.
him, and he wants to find the biggest rock to take to the top. And so this little trail had a little bit of an incline, but he wanted the big rock, and he found one and carried it all the way
Got to
up.
bring it up.
He was so tired when we got to the top, but he put his rock there at the top, and he was super happy about it. So
Can you tell the listeners about the next mountains that you and your sons will high point?
yes, so our plans for this year. Actually, I'll tell you two, because the actual next one is just Missouri. Missouri is
Mhm.
not really, there's not any other high points close to the Missouri high point. So I decided that one will be just a solo trip of just that high point.
Okay.
And since it's just going to Missouri and back, we're going to do that during spring break. But in
Hmm.
the coming summer, we're going to fly to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta do the Georgia High Point, and then both the Carolinas and Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee. And then I'm not real sure yet where exactly I want to go home from, because I do want to spend some time in Gatlinburg while we're there
Yeah.
in that area. And so I don't know if I'm going to fly home from that area or go back to Atlanta to make it a round trip, like an easy purchase plane ticket.
Hmm.
But that's definitely what we're doing. Like that's the next big one is Georgia, Carolinas, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee.
Oh, that'll be beautiful.
Yeah, I really look forward to it. I look forward to it a lot. I mean, it's just such pretty country. through there.
Hmm.
And Mount Mitchell, that's the highest high point on the east side of the Mississippi River.
That's right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's a really cool landmark to get a picture in front of that sign. So when you tell your friends and other family members about high pointing and taking your sons along with you, what do they say?
Well, first off, they have no idea what it is,
Right?
because it's not common. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what it is. So
Yeah.
after I tell them what it is, then they kind of just go into a like, oh, well, that's a cool family trip to do. Like y'all are having bonding time. That's a great vacation. Sometimes they have questions, and sometimes they just move on with their day, because I don't think everybody shares the same passion for climbing mountains
No,
that us high pointers do.
no.
And to me, I'm thrilled and
Yeah.
excited, and
Yeah.
other people, they're just like, okay, like I could have told them I was in a bowling league. Like they're just as excited. It's that thrilling. Yeah.
Right. But you know, you just can't expect people to understand what you do. And it's why that these communities exist, like you mentioned earlier, that there's these social media groups, there's a High Pointers Club, there's a magazine, and that's so fun to be able to share with like-minded people your endeavor and your next challenge, and you can give advice about previous mountains. Like I haven't done Arkansas, and so it was really good to hear you talk about that.
You'll like it. You'll love the viewpoints.
Yeah, I've driven through Arkansas and it is beautiful. But it was before I did high pointing. I wish, looking back now that I'm doing this high pointing endeavor, I think about all the road trips that I took where I didn't go to a high point. And I'm like, I just wasted all those miles on my car. I could have been knocking off these high points. So when your sons tell their friends at school what they did over spring break or summer break, they're like, yeah, my mom took us halfway across the country to these high points. What do their friends say?
I don't even really know, because they're teenagers, so it's hard to get that type of information out of them. Like, hey, what did your friend think about this? And
Right.
hey, did your friend? Yeah, that's not something that they really. They'll just be real simple. They're like, oh, I told them, and I'm like, okay, and well, I told them, and that's it. Like, okay, never mind. They're teenage boys, not teenage girls, so.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You told us about your favorite high point. What are some other memorable moments that you've had on high points? Maybe they weren't your favorite. Maybe they were super long hikes that you wish would end sooner. Or what are some just memorable moments that you can walk us through?
I have a lot. So nothing has been difficult yet, because the 5 that we did are all pretty easy. I mean,
Yeah.
Florida is the lowest high point, and you just
Right.
get out of the
Still.
car and walk. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
only 345 feet above sea level, and then but there's definitely memorable moments, like the high point for Louisiana, which is Driscoll Mountain. That one is a decent little hike from a church. You start at a church, you go through private property, and then you get to the high point. And that was our very first one, so that one was definitely memorable, because
Yeah.
obviously it's the first one. And then on the way to Florida, my youngest son, his birthday happened. So we were actually in New Orleans for his birthday. And I'm actually wearing the shirt. This is a shirt that I got from New Orleans on his birthday.
That's cool.
And then when the boys found out that we were passing through Alabama to get to Florida, they were super excited to go to the USS Alabama,
Oh,
the battleship.
yeah.
Yeah, and so that was an exciting moment, and I think that was one of the most memorable times for them. And then we went to Florida, and we went to Pensacola Beach to stay the night before we did the high point the next day. So, obviously any day at the beach is a great day. And especially for us, we live in North Central Texas. So going to a white sandy beach in Florida was just super nice. And then
Yeah.
after we went to the Alabama high point, well, let me back up. On the way to the Alabama high point, a thunderstorm came through, like lightning and everything. I had to drive like 30 miles an hour because the rain was pouring down so heavy.
Wow.
And I was just like, we are going to the highest point in this entire state, and it is lightning right now. But we timed it just right, because Like maybe 5 minutes before we got to the entrance of the state park, the storm cleared away, and so like we were safe. And then after that, we went to my mom lives in Alabama, so we got to go visit her. She's only like an hour from the state high point. So moments like that, visiting family, going to the beach, celebrating birthdays, all of those things happened on the trip.
Oh, that's fun. And that's perfect too. And that makes it so memorable because it's not like, oh, mom's just dragging us to another high point, you know. You get to make a vacation out of it. That's fun. Do you plan on doing the Texas State High Point in Guadalupe Mountain?
Yeah, so actually I mentioned earlier that we're going to go do Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of caught between, because Texas is also kind of just like way out there.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's going to be another trip, kind of like the Missouri one. That's like, just get Texas, you know? I think for me, it's like 10 hours from here, and Missouri for me is 9 hours from me. So I was kind of split. Like I can do one or the other. And I think I pitched it to the boys and they want to do Missouri. So Texas will eventually come, but it's not on the immediate itinerary, which is funny because like I live in Texas. You would think you would get Texas. But Texas is so big. There's so many other high points that are closer to me than Texas. When we do the Texas one, we're definitely going to go to the caverns as well.
Throughout your high pointing, during your hikes, do you ever run into other people who are doing the same thing?
Did we? I don't think we have so far. No, because when we got to Louisiana, it was already sunset. Like when we came down off the mountain, like we ended up walking in the dark back to the car. So nobody was out there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Florida, no, and nobody was there when we went to the Florida one. We got there at like the noon a day, and it's July. It was super hot and humid and muggy. And Alabama, I think with the storm having just rolled by, anybody that was in the state park was like hunkered down. And and then here we are. Just and then Woodall Mountain, which is Mississippi, there was a couple there with a young child, but they were kind of wrapping up as we were getting out of the car, so there wasn't even any chance to say hi really. And then Arkansas, we were the only ones on the trail, so no, wow. I haven't experienced that moment yet. No.
Well, that's cool too. You had these places to yourself.
Yeah.
If you could redo a high point, which one would it be?
So I would definitely redo Louisiana and Florida, and that's just because it wasn't until I got to Alabama, which was our third high point, that I found out about the little geological society, the little circle that they marked, the official marker. And so I have pictures of like us standing on the marker. I have pictures of Bucky on the marker, and so like I got that for Alabama and Mississippi and Arkansas, because in Alabama is when I found out about it. So then I actually looked for it. Well, I didn't know about it, so I didn't look for it for Louisiana or Florida. So the only pictures I have are just like the signs. I don't have like the official marker picture, and I want that.
Oh, the sign's cool too.
Yeah. I think the ones that like excite me the most would be Mount Whitney and Mount Rainier, because Mount Whitney is the highest of the lowest 48. So I just feel like that one has like bragging rights with it, you know? And then you've done Mount Whitney, right?
I have. Yeah. I tried twice. Made it up once.
So I feel like that one just because that one is an accomplishment. And then Mount Rainier, I'm really interested in doing that one just because, I mean, it's a big mountain, and then it's covered in snow. So you're adding in these different elements that the other ones don't have. And I just like the challenge of that.
So what are the benefits that you get from high pointing? And then talk us through some of the benefits that you can see that your children are getting through doing this endeavor with you.
I mean, exercise, obviously, and then getting to, just getting to get out there, and then also like being able to say like, oh, I've been to this state and this state and this state and this state. You know, I see it a lot on Facebook, like put a emoji next to every state you've been to and things like that. And I mean, it's been like that in my life. My experience is ever since elementary school, people are always comparing how many states they've been to. And so it's this I don't know what it is. It's just this social thing that we do. And how far have you been from home? And how many places have you been to?
That's great.
And I'm an avid picture taker, so I just love like seeing different new things and taking the pictures and getting to share those pictures with people and then obviously the time spent with my children, us getting to do like a family thing together to make memories and be healthy doing it, because it's it's not something you can do if you're not in health, you know?
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a long hike.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So I think those are just the benefits, really, just being in nature, bragging rights, and bonding as a family. Yeah.
That's awesome.
They love saying how many states they've been to. And the same as you, it's kind of the same for us in Central Texas. I mean, it's Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. That's where everybody went during summer vacation. Yeah.
So what is your favorite adventure story, whether that be from a podcast or a book or a documentary? Maybe one that even inspired you to get out there, do some high pointing, do some hiking.
Adventure story. Man, I wish I read more as an adult now than I did as a child. But so that's what I'm doing. I was going to bring one from my childhood. And I don't know if it's adventure as much as it is pioneering. I was a huge fan of Little House on the Prairie. When I was a little kid. Yeah, I read every one of those books cover to cover. And by the time I was like 9 years old, I think I was inspired by her to write my own autobiography. And she was like in her late 60s, I think, when she started writing those books. And I was like, how does she remember all of these details from her childhood? And so I remember thinking, like, I need to start writing now because I'm going to forget this stuff by the time I'm 70. But they were going west in the 1800s. And so that's quite the adventure. You know, they were pioneering the West back then. So that book, it's not really an adventure book, but there's a lot of adventures in it for sure.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the author was Laura Ingalls Wilder, right?
Yeah.
I loved those books too. And you know what? Now that you say that, I think that was my first adventure books.
Yeah.
I got the box set for like Christmas or a birthday or something. And I remember the one that she wrote about winter. It was like winter in Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that. And, you know, it was cold where I was in Illinois too. And I was just like, wow, they really suffered. You know? I thought I was cold. But
yeah, in the book, she talks about they all lay on the living room floor in front of the fire, like everybody huddled up. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to hear her talk about, I think, life in Kansas or Iowa, I don't know where she was, but it was in the Midwest, just like me. And it was so, I never thought that I would get into a book about that kind of lifestyle at that age. I was like a teenager and I was just diving into these books about hunkering down in the winter and, you know, getting enough firewood and keeping your family warm and farming and everything. But she had a gift of writing and I loved it. That is so interesting that you said that because I did not think of that until now. You know, when I think of adventure books, I'm thinking like Himalayan expeditions, people who sail around the world, but man, Laura Ingalls Wilder wrote about our backyard, didn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so
Yep,
cool.
definitely. Have you seen, I want to say it's a documentary. I'm not real sure if it is. It's about this guy from Nepal and he attempts and achieves a Guinness World Record to summit all 14 of the world's 14ers, or like in meters, 14,000 meters, or I think it is. I don't know.
Meters.
You do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The documentary is called 14 Peaks. And the guy who does it is Nims Purja. And he climbs all of the 8,000 meter peaks, the highest mountains in the world. And he does it in record time. And his life is fascinating, just his background and, you know, very humble beginnings. And he did something really, really incredible and really exposed to the world the community that he's from and what they're capable of. And it was incredible.
Yeah, I think that was his whole goal, really. And not just to climb the peaks, but was to share his community and his culture. and he did an amazing job. I'm blown away and impressed and inspired by his work. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the reason that I ask this question during these podcasts is because what we do, and when I say we, I mean people who do any kind of outdoor adventure, whether it be climbing, hiking, mountain biking, skiing, anything. For the most part, it's not really a spectator sport. Winter Olympics aside. So we have to have these ways of telling people about what we do and sharing our adventures and trip reports. And for some people, they're very successful at it, and they turn into books and documentaries. And so that's why I'm always trying to get the word out there of what people like, because like you said, with Nim's Purja's documentary, it can inspire you to do something that you didn't think you would do.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like I said, like, we tell people about highpointing and they have no idea what it is. Like you saying it's not a spectator sport. It's just not even, it's not a well-known thing. It's not something publicized, televised, or any of that stuff.
Is there anything else that you want to tell people about highpointing?
I definitely know that highpointing has definitely led to other adventures as well, because like I also want to do the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. I want to do the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada. And I'm especially excited about the PCT because I just love the Pacific Northwest. It is so gorgeous. And I want to explore as much of it as possible. And I think also with the highpointing, like it gets to take me to these places that I wouldn't otherwise experience or see. Like I would have never ended up in Iuka, Mississippi, but Woodall Mountain took me there,
Yeah, you're right.
So,
well, and it's interesting that your trip to Tahoe really opened up a world for you of adventure and for your family.
It really did. It really did. That was climbing that mountain was most definitely like it opened up an entire, like now I have all these vacations planned with my kids, and so all just because a friend invited me to visit them.
Wow. Well, I hope that the story that you share here can maybe inspire some other people, maybe even people that live in your area to get out there and start climbing, start hiking. Just get out. Take your kids with you.
Exactly. Yeah. I hope so. There's so much to it, there's so much to it. The adventure, the family, you can take friends, it can be a solo adventure. And I mean, you get to make it your own, and there's so much to it. It's so much more than just climbing a mountain. So.
It really is. It is. And as you continue in this endeavor, you start to gather not just stories, but memories. And they're not always on these huge peaks. You don't have to go through a near-death experience to have this, this crazy memory.
I've got the picture of like me on the Mount Rose summit with Lake Tahoe in the background. Oh. That's where it all began, was on that. And that mountain, it's a 10,000 feet above sea level. So it was a good little little starting point. Yeah. It's
that
up
was
there,
your first mountain. Wow.
That was my first mountain. Yeah.
That's really cool.
So when I did Florida, it was super easy.
Sure. Yeah.